Let's talk about Skull and Bones. On one hand, you've got Helldivers 2, which is completely thriving as a live service. And on the other hand, you have Skull and Bones, which so far it's looking like it's going to flop. And unless there's a major turnaround in the long term down the line, it doesn't seem like this is going to be a long-lasting live service. Its lifespan post-launch will be likely, from my opinion, based on what we're seeing so far, a fraction of what it took to actually make this game. Keep in mind that this game started development all the way back in 2013, so we're talking about an 11-year-long development cycle. This is a game that likely would have been canceled if it wasn't for the fact that the Singaporean government demanded that it release because of a deal that Ubisoft made with the Singaporean government that essentially forced this game to be made. And the end result was a development cycle that saw tons of delays, tons of reboots, and a lot of creative heads just shifting, new creative directors. Not that long ago, a third creative director came in to help complete the game, and it is finally out, but it is not the quadruple A title that Ubisoft CEO claimed Skull and Bones to be. He used that as a justification for the $70 price point that is currently hurting sales for the game, because a lot of people are realizing that Skull and Bones is nowhere close to being justified with an extra A, being something that is a greater experience than all of the huge, large-scale, jam-packed AAA games that we've seen released throughout the course of the last few months and years, and that will release in the coming months and years. The term quadruple A is just complete marketing bullshit that has no real meaning whatsoever. And we can see right here that Skull and Bones launched to tepid reviews, a 63% from 27 critic reviews. Not a lot of critics are even checking this game out. The ones who have are giving it middling scores. The user reviews you can see right here are not particularly favorable, and the fact that there are only 137 user ratings on this platform says a lot about the level of engagement as far as this game is concerned. On OpenCritic, it's even more brutal. The top critic average is 60%, but the number of critics who would actually recommend this game, a mere 13%. So that's not a great sign, especially at $70. The game is $60 on the Epic Games Store on PC, but if you go to the PlayStation Store, you can see right now that it is $70. It does come with a free trial, which likely contributes to some of the player base that we're seeing right now. But whether players will stick with the experience and feel compelled to buy the full game, that's a whole other story. It also doesn't help matters that Skull and Bones, for some reason, they decided to make an Epic Games exclusive alongside also obviously selling it on the Ubisoft launcher. I don't know why you would limit the user base of your game when its marketing was so rough and when every indication says that this game is just, it could use every help it can get, and releasing the game on Steam would have likely helped boost numbers, but right now it is an Epic Games exclusive on PC, likely timed exclusive. And then further indication that the game is flopping is the fact that the game in the UK launched at number 4 when it comes to boxed sales, which is a quarter of Sea of Thieves launch. Now, it is true that digital has become more prominent since Sea of Thieves launched back in 2018, but I don't know if so much so that it completely accounts for the fact that Skull and Bones only sold a quarter of Sea of Thieves. And speaking of Sea of Thieves, the main criticism surrounding Skull and Bones is that it ultimately doesn't do anything that other games of this kind don't do better. Sea of Thieves is a more compelling experience because you're not controlling the ship directly, you're the crew that controls the ship. And so that makes the ship and sailing experience more fun because you got multiple people, a crew who have to work together to navigate the ship and to handle all of its different components. And so you're working together to coordinate. Whereas in Skull and Bones, there's no boots on the ground gameplay. It's all just ship navigation gameplay where buttons allow you to perform certain functions of the ship, but you yourself aren't performing those functions. So it's a less immersive, like pirate-like experience, if you will. Sea of Thieves is better on that front because you've got both the much more involved naval gameplay combined with the boots-on-the-ground gameplay where you get to go to islands and you get to like solve mysteries and puzzles or interact with other players and, you know, find respite. It just feels like a much more feature-complete pirate simulator or pirate game experience. And what's funny is that Ubisoft itself has already made a better pirate game than Skull and Bones in the form of, you guessed it, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which has the naval combat and the boots on the ground stuff on top of a full-fledged assassination campaign. So it's like you're almost better off just playing Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Skull and Bones just doesn't push the boundaries enough as a naval combat game and as a game that tries to make you feel like a pirate. Like mechanically it functions and there's fun to be had here and there, but it just doesn't stand out from the pack and other games that just nail this kind of experience far better, which is why it's failed to garner much attention, why it's got tepid reviews, why UK sales seem rather meager. And then to top it all off, here we have a report from Tom Henderson at InsiderGaming.com, who has relayed, based on information obtained from sources, that the game's total player base is not looking particularly great, especially for a live service. So speaking to sources, the game is currently sitting at around 850,000 players total at the time of writing, which includes those who have opted to play the game with the 8-hour free trial provided by Ubisoft. Less than 1 million in sales is not a great performance at all for a long-term live service, especially when much of that is likely people checking out the free trial, so they haven't paid any money at all to play this game, and Ubisoft is banking on the free trial, convincing people to spend money, $70 on this game to get the full experience. Whether that will end up happening, only time will tell. While players do seem fairly engaged, with the average player playing between 3 and 4 hours a day, do keep in mind that that is in large part because the game has a free trial, but whether or not that will change once the free trial expires or if it will convert players into full purchases remains to be seen. I personally don't get the sense that this game has long legs, especially when Helldivers 2 happened to release right alongside it and completely stole the thunder away from Skull and Bones. Helldivers 2 right now is exploding. It's still having trouble keeping up with just the influx of players that is coming in and checking out this game. The game that's dominating live service conversation right now is Helldivers 2 and how freaking fun it is to play. And I mean, not even just on the internet, just out in the wild. Like, I'm talking to friends and people who I know are gamers, and they're just like, hey, are you playing Helldivers 2? Let's play together. Like, even, you know, in the real world, I'm seeing the buzz of Helldivers 2 rapidly spread. No such thing for Skull and Bones. Not a single person I've met has even mentioned that game. And one of the major factors that's being attributed to the current low player numbers is the fact that this is a fully priced $60 to $70 game, which apparently has not only been criticized publicly, especially after Yves Guillemot came out with a bullshit statement that Skull and Bones is a quadruple A game, but also internally, developers knew that this game should not be sold at $70. One of Insider Gaming's sources straight up said that, I think we all know this is a $30 to $40 game at best, but it's not in our control to determine those things. It most certainly is not a quadruple A game, especially when the developers actually making the game are like, yeah, this is not even worth $70. It should be $30 to $40. And keep in mind that Helldivers 2 was $40 and offers a far more fleshed out, far more compelling, far more fun experience than the $70 Skull and Bones, which is a big part of why Helldivers 2 stole the thunder. Aside from it being just a high quality, really fun game, the pricing is just so affordable and so accessible. And yeah, I mean, at this rate, the game is not expected to make its money back. Apparently, it costs around $200 million to make this game during its decade-long development, a sum that the company doesn't expect to make back, especially with the current slow sales. None of this is at all surprising based on the reception that the game was getting during marketing, during previews, and just the general vibe of how people were feeling about this game. There was the general sense that this game was not going to be particularly phenomenal, and there was a sense that there was just not a whole lot of interest surrounding it. It's just such a stark contrast from Helldivers 2, which once again broke its all-time peak concurrent players recently. It's up to 457,649 players, and I mean, you can see right here, people are consistently coming back to this game at numbers that are close to the all-time peak. As of an hour ago, 343,440 players are checking this game out, are playing it right now, and the 24-hour peak is sitting at 444,547 players. And I imagine that if the server capacity for Helldivers 2 were greater, because the game's currently, suffering from success and struggling to keep up with the influx of players, these numbers may very well be higher. And also, this is just Steam, by the way. We're not even taking into account the number of people who purchased the game on PlayStation 5 and are playing on PlayStation 5. This is just such a night and day difference when comparing two live services, one that got it so right, Helldivers 2, and one that got it so wrong, Skull and Bones. On a conceptual level, I think Skull and Bones just was led astray by trying to make essentially a more trimmed down version of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. That game, except just the naval combat with none of the boots on the ground stuff that really makes the pirate experience a pirate experience, combined with the fact that this game has been through development hell and saw multiple reboots and was just not managed particularly well, and combined with, Yves Guillemot coming out and trying to advertise this as a quadruple A game and touting it as being something that it really isn't, and just all of the negative elements surrounding it that Helldivers 2 did not have at all. This is a game that was seemingly developed a lot more efficiently. It was announced not long before it came out. It had this really strong core vision behind it. The developers knew exactly what they wanted to make with this game and just executed it to not perfection per se. Again, there's server issues, there's still certain bugs and crashes and whatever that people are experiencing. There are kinks to work out for sure, but you can play this game and immediately know that this game is in for the long haul and that people are going to keep coming back to this. The base game, there's already so much more content and substance than Skull and Bones has. And it's just one of those games that's addictive and hard to pull yourself away from. It's not generic, and it feels like it's doing its own thing. There's nothing quite like Helldivers 2, even if the genre is familiar. What it does with that genre and the way it adds that Starship Troopers flavor with the chaos that four players cooperatively can cause in the chaotic environment that Helldivers 2 throws you in. All of that is just, there's a reason why it's a lot more talked about than something like Skull and Bones. And so I think the stark contrast between these two makes a lot of sense when you zoom out and look at the overall picture of these two games, their concepts, and how their developments and their launches were handled. So, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for Skull and Bones. Maybe there's a chance for it to make an epic comeback if it can pull out what No Man's Sky or Final Fantasy XIV did and really keep it updated. I mean, Ubisoft has come back from dreadful launches before. Rainbow Six Siege comes to mind, where it was just so bare bones and just nowhere near the state that it should have been at launch, but they supported it for the long term. I think For Honor also had something similar happen to it, but Rainbow Six Siege really is the Ubisoft comeback as far as live services go. That is the marquee example of what they could potentially do if they stick with it. But I feel like Skull and Bones just conceptually is not compelling enough for it to really draw in players unless they overhaul the game and add a boots on the ground component to it, like a pirate element that really makes it feel like a pirate game. Then maybe that will spark a certain interest surrounding the game. If they can add that much to it, maybe there's a chance for a new wave of interest to be garnered for this game. But if all they're going to do is just try to add more content to this just naval combat game that feels like a stripped version of an experience like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, I don't foresee it maintaining its live service stature for long. I foresee it shutting down in a not so distant future. I think there's going to be a steeper climb. But if it can make a comeback, if they can add so much more additional content to it and add so many additional elements to it to really make it feel like the pirate experience that we'd like out of a game like this, then hey, that'd be great. And I'd look forward to a future like that. But currently, my prospects for this game are pretty grim and pessimistic. Maybe I'll turn it around. I won't hold my breath for it, but that's the best we can hope for at this point. But I guess we'll see. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Skull and Bones and what you think it would take for the game to make a major comeback and whether or not you expect the game to make any sort of major comeback. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.